Put your fingers in your ear.
On Wednesday, December 6th, Marty Griffin did an interview with County Councilwoman Bethany Hallam outside the Allegheny County Jail. The topic of the interview was a measure where County Council will invest $500,000 in changing the color of uniforms in the jail in order to improve the working conditions for the corrections workers and also the experience of the inmates. Now, I found this to be very compelling. I was impressed with Bethany. I felt she was confident. I felt she made a strong case. It's worth $500,000 to see a significant improvement in the conditions in the county jail, which will affect workers as well as inmates. So I felt she made a very strong case. Marty Griffin affirmed Bethany's claim that the decision was based on studies from the Department of Justice. First, let me play you the segment of the interview that persuaded me.
She found fabricated the moon is made of cheese kind of studies that indicate that the inmates would be happier if they had pretty uniforms on.
Not happier. And first of all, the fabricated study you're referencing is from the Department of Justice.
Oh, yeah,
so
she's right.
You know.
You're right.
But yeah, it's not about being happier.
So the people say she made that up. It's just not true.
Yeah.
There are studies that suggest that what?
That the color red increases heart rate, increases blood pressure, increases anxiety and aggression, all of the things that we don't want inside this jail.
Okay, so changing the color from red uniforms, I guess, or orange, whatever they have, to another color is going to make conditions so much better in the jail, according to this authoritative Department of Justice study. And if you watch more of the interview, you can find it on Marty Griffin's X. Bethany retweeted it several times. And you can find the rest of it. But you'll see later she shows him different samples of colors. And the color they seemed to settle on was a beige, a neutral color. The problem is, there is no supporting science evidence for changing the color of uniforms. If we look at the Office of Justice Programs website, part of the DOJ, they do have an article, Color and Its Effects on Inmate Behavior. It's a short piece. It's not the full study. It has the abstract and the annotation, but it says when color is used properly in prisons and jails, it can lessen the overall tension and make a facility a better place to work. And it talks about red, as Bethany cited, increasing heart rate, and but the counter to that would be a green or a blue, not necessarily a beige. The important part here is all of this is talking about room colors. So the colors painted on the walls, the color that you're immersed in when you're in a particular space within the jail. None of the studies are talking about uniform colors. Now, unfortunately, they linked this to the WorldCat library, and the actual study behind this is not available. I did search some of the references. I found this study from the Santa Clara County Jail. One of the areas in the jail where they had the most conflict and the most incidents of, hands-on violence between staff and inmates is the strip search room. So they painted it, they changed the color of the strip search room, and initially it appeared like it made an effect. So initially there was a significant dramatic impact. But over time, that impact dwindled, and in fact, it went the opposite direction. So there was more incidents, more violence after the color change. What does all that mean? Well, what's happening here is a combination, you could describe it as power of suggestion and the placebo effect. So when they tell the workers, probably more so than the inmates, when they tell the workers that we're changing this color, it's going to calm everyone down, it's going to make the situation much better, Inmates will be more compliant. It's going to lower the temperature and decrease the amount of conflict in the room. You tell someone that, that's a suggestion, okay? And when they walk into the room and they see the color, it kind of triggers that suggestion into like a placebo effect. So they're told that this color change is going to have this effect, so that kind of triggers in their mind. But then over time, when the color becomes normal again, it's no longer a trigger, the effect goes away. So these studies, even though it's for a long time been believed that color affects behavior, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of ambiguity around it, a lot of uncertainty as to how accurate and how good that it is. Now, searching the Office of Justice names the author I.S.K. Reeves. He happened to write a book, which I couldn't find. This is all pretty old stuff. But I found an obscure, and I'll link this in the description, someone's blog where it appears they took excerpts out of I.S.K. Reeves' book because he's listed at the bottom as the author. The conclusion of the research done by the person who wrote the article that the Department of Justice is citing says the research that we have conducted and to a larger extent reviewed has admittedly found wide diversification in opinion as to how and why color affects the human being. The world of color is full of contradiction, and all research aside, psychological effects are extremely difficult to measure in scientifically accepted terms. They found an almost complete lack of definitive research regarding color as it relates to behavior modification in a corrections facility. So this looks to be an excerpt, if not the actual paper, then an excerpt from the book. It's talking about room colors, environment. When you cite an authoritative source like the Department of Justice and reference science, what you're saying is this is indisputable fact. Okay, that we know what the result of this is going to be. And that's what Bethany was saying, and Marty conceded to that. But in reality, the studies are only about room colors, and even that is somewhat questionable. So what you have here is spending a certain amount of money, in this case $500,000, for a result that it may not ever be noticeable, measurable, and if you do measure it right after the change, if you do measure it, you have to do it over a long period of time. When making decisions about how to spend taxpayer money, you should be looking for the value of that money. So the more money you want to spend, the greater the value must be. If you have a relatively small number, so it becomes subjective at that point. Is $500,000 a large sum for an effect that we may not ever see? What's really going to happen, it's symbolic. So you can show pictures of inmates in jail with those red, bright uniforms. It's not a good look. Okay, I think the reason that those were used historically is to advertise this is an inmate. If they were to escape or if they're walking around other areas of the jail, they're instantly identifiable as an inmate. If you recall, there used to be the black and white stripes. That's what I think colors were chosen for, was just so you could identify who's an inmate and who is not. So the look is criminal. And what they're going to do is then point later and say, look what we did. Now I'll show you a picture of them wearing their beige uniforms. And it's going to look more humane. It's going to look like we've basically reduced the amount of criminals, or we've converted criminals into something more mild. That's going to be a psychological impact. So that's what Bethany and the others who voted for this will do, is down the road, they can point to photos. Look what we did. This will be hailed as an accomplishment, even though there's no way to quantify whether the improvement was there or not. We saw a similar thing in our local school district here in Shaler, when they changed graduation gowns, where it used to be blue for boys and white for girls, they wanted to go to a unisex for the trans, the whole new gender, the whole new way of looking at gender. Everybody's the same. It was presented as this was from the students. This was an organic, student-led effort. And, it's not us forcing this thing. One of the members of the school board who was a champion of this ran in the primary for state rep and gave a speech. When she spoke of her service on the school board, she cited one accomplishment. Guess what it was? We did this. We changed these uniform colors. There was nothing about budgets, academic improvements. Only one accomplishment was cited, and it was that we created this better environment by changing the gown colors. So that's what it is. I mean, I think Bethany's intentions, I think she cares very much about the conditions in the jail. I think she really does want to make an improvement. And, she may be deluding herself to some extent. But, if there was a simple spend $500,000, a simple, easy to do, just create different color uniforms, and bam, big improvement, sure, why wouldn't you do it? But that's naive. Meaningful change in something like a jail environment like that is hard work. It takes time. It takes thought. It should be normally a team effort with some research done and things. So this is just a quickie. Boom, look what we did. We made a big difference. Feather in our cap. We feel good about ourselves. Let's move on. That's my opinion anyway.